Anyone opposed? That moves forward. This evening, we do have a presentation from Downtown Inc. on an update on the Codorus Creek project from Silas Chamberlin. Good evening, Mr. Chamberlain.
Oh, good evening. Thanks, Council, for having me. I'm going to try not to read into half the room emptying out right before my presentation, so I don't blame them. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to just give a quick update on the Codorus Greenway. As you know, it's a project we've been working on for, believe it or not, I think we're going on 8 years now since we really secured the first funding to get the planning for this project underway. So just to refresh your memory, as a community, we've been talking about a Codorus Greenway for over a century. Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park in New York City, actually came to York and helped work with community leaders to say, what if instead of, at the time, the Codorus was an open sewer, it were this green, welcoming, accessible place that was sort of the centerpiece of our community. And we didn't move forward at the time, and we've had a century now of flooding along the Codorus Creek in 1933. We had Indian Rock Dam constructed above the city, which helped with some flooding issues. We also had the construction of a levee system, and so the Codorus through the city of York is controlled by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which will come back as an issue when we talk about permitting because it's all under federal control. And despite all that work, of course, had Hurricane Agnes in the 70s that inundated a number of the neighborhoods in the downtown in the city. We've also had previous planning done to say, what if we did invest in this corridor? Economically was the plan on the left, and sort of socially and as a community was the plan on the right through things like public art. We also, the City of York adopted a green action plan in 2017 that called for the greening of the Northwest Triangle and Lafayette Plaza. And really that has in some ways come to fruition with the development in the Northwest Triangle and the rail trail being completed through the area. We've invested in the rail trail along the east bank of the Codorus and completed the trail back in 2023 with the Golden Spike, which of course now will complement all the development happening there. And we have seen literally hundreds of millions of dollars of economic development along the corridor of the Codorus. And yet the basic levee system of the Codorus still looks like this today. Series of crumbling walls, still sort of a trench that people can't access the water's edge. In fact, there's really only one public access point at Foundry Plaza in the city of York. And we still continue to see, significant runoff events without any of that sediment being captured. It goes into the Susquehanna River and then it goes down to the Chesapeake Bay, which contributes to all those issues down there. And that's just fond memories of the Basco Gate Dam before it was removed. I'll return to that in a second. So about 7 or 8 years ago, we started working on a master plan for what would it look like to sort of fulfill that vision of a green, accessible, and attractive Codorus Creek. And we envisioned this greenway that's 1.4 miles long, stretching from York College at Grantley and Bance Park on the upstream end, and Wellspan Park and Kids Space on the downstream end, really connecting through all the neighborhoods of the city, most of the neighborhoods of the city, as well as the downtown. And like I said, this has already been a corridor for affordable housing development, market rate housing development, our history center, York College's investments, our, it says People's Bank Park, Wellspan Park, and other assets that have been built. And so in trying to bite off a piece that we could chew from this 1.4 mile project, we focused in on a phase one that's shown here in red. That would be the full build out of our Greenway vision from roughly Bance Park down to College Avenue, and the construction of a trail that will begin at Bance Park and follow the west bank of the Codorus, and I'll show you some renderings of this in a moment, the whole way down to Foundry Plaza. So this would be the first phase of the project, and it would get us about a third of the overall Greenway project and more than half of the trail that we're envisioning. And so this is basically what this looks like today, although you would see at the top right, Knowledge Park now complete by York College, and the Densply property on the left. But you can see the crumbling walls, highly cut off from the surrounding community. And what we're basically proposing is creating a low flow channel through the middle of the creek, which will speed up the velocity of the water, which is good for wildlife and fish, keeps it oxygenated. And then the vegetated buffers you're seeing on the side are still within the levee system, so that every time there's a flooding event, not outside the levee walls, but, every couple years when the water comes up, instead of all that sediment going down the Susquehanna River, it gets absorbed into these riparian buffers. So there's a water quality element. On the left, you can see the trail construction that'll begin at Bance and continue downstream. We're actually moving the trail up to the top of the bank because when this rendering was done, we didn't have a new owner of the Dentsply property. We do now, and so we're designing that in partnership with them. And just give you a different perspective on this. A little further downstream, this is College Avenue Bridge, which is being replaced by the County of York. You can see a Homes at Thaxton on the right, and you can see Knowledge Park up the stream. Take note on the right side of this image that there is no public access at all between the Homes at Thaxton and that great neighborhood and the water's edge. In fact, there's a chain link fence across the top of the creek to keep people from accessing it. And so the vision for the Greenway is to lay back that bank, create a new access point. What you're seeing along the top there is a continuation of that trail from Vance Park that continues through this whole project, allowing people to get off city streets and use the trail to get to the food bank, get between their homes and the K-12 institutions that are along here, and get to the Rabbit Transit facility. And I should note that there's a place we've been holding all throughout the design process to recreate Thaxton Park between the levee, top of the levee, and the new Homes at Thaxton. And that's that green space that's being held there. We've been working with the city and the design firm that they hired to think about what will fit in there. This is just coming a little bit further downstream. This is King Street. So on the left is the Rabbit Transit facility, which we know is a destination for many people walking in the downtown. It's a way to get out of town into some of the grocery stores and other services. Again, no access to the creek's edge here. The new West Bank Trail will come within the levee system. The switchback on the bottom right would get people from that new trail up to King Street to cross or to go to Logos there. And then it continues down off-screen the whole way to Foundry Plaza. So in effect, that is the phase one. As part of some of the federal funding we've received for the project, we had to quantify some of the benefits of the project because they want to know that their federal investment will pay off locally. So we were able to estimate about $190 million in benefit in 20 years. And unlike most economic projections, this doesn't include the value of construction or temporary job creation. These are primarily stats from Department of Transportation because of getting people off city streets and onto a multimodal bike trail actually prevents vehicular pedestrian conflict and death and injury. So they were able to look back over time to local streets and see how many people had been hit by cars and injured or killed, and then actually project out what the safety benefits would be if people had a more walkable backbone to get between all these different assets. And then also the stormwater benefits are pretty substantial. Up to 16% of York County's overall sediment reduction goals can be met by this project alone. It's also really important that we have these multimodal connections because the census tracts adjacent to the first phase of this project, around 27% of households don't have access to a personal vehicle. So foot and bicycle traffic is how most people are getting around, and this trail would connect them to a bunch of different things along the Codorus. So we've raised a whole bunch of funding for this. What you're seeing is pretty much every state and federal source and even County of York and City of York funding that's available for these types of projects that kind of mix stormwater and transportation economic development together. The big one is the very last one on there, the U.S. Department of Transportation RAISE grant. That was a $15 million grant that we received earlier this year, which really helped us get to full funding for phase one. But we're grateful to the City of York for some of the ARPA funding that you've provided, as well as the County of York through their Marcellus Shale funding. And so just a sense of where we're at now, this first phase that I showed you is $35 million. That is fully funded with state and federal sources. So construction is good to go from a funding perspective. Our critical path item now is just permitting with our federal agency partners at Army Corps of Engineers and Pennsylvania partners at Department of Environmental Protection. We submitted our materials to both. They're working through the permitting process. We are really beholden to them at this point, but we're hopeful that, we can accommodate whatever changes they would like to see. I mentioned that we're also coordinating with the new developer at the Densplay property, make sure our trail can go top of bank through what he is and the team there are projecting. And so pretty much what that looks like is the trail will be top of bank. That still allows all the development to occur at the Densplay property. And we continue to work with CS Davidson and Buchard Horn on design and engineering of the Market Street Bridge. This isn't part of phase one of the Codorus project, but we know that in the not so distant future, the Market Street Bridge will need to be replaced. The first step in that is designing it so we know how much it's going to cost. That'll allow YCEA and the City of York and the County of York and the MPO to go out and raise the money to do that reconstruction. And because we have this opportunity to redesign it, we can redesign it in such a way that actually reduces flooding on the Codorus, which is a win-win for everybody. So the rough timeline here is that in the very end of 2023, the City of York provided $500,000 of your ARPA funding to remove the Baskill Gate Dam. You were actually under an order from the Army Corps of Engineers to remove it, so it worked well to have that federal funding come in. In 2024, we completed that demolition. I have some photos in just a moment. We submitted our Army Corps of Engineering permit earlier this year. DEP's full permit will go in. We already had a pre-application meeting with them. And then we're really on their clock. So if they approve this in early 2025, we can put our bid packages together and potentially go to construction next year because we have our construction funding. And it's about a year after we go to construction of getting it complete. This is just some images of the Baskill Gate Dam. Everybody remembers what that looked like before. It was stuck in an upright position. It sort of was a sieve for, debris coming down the creek. We actually had to enter the creek and build cofferdams to, isolate the dam. That's from the Commerce Center looking down on it. And had to de-water portions of the creek and bypass it to get the excavators in there to remove the foundation of the dam. This is the before, and this is the after. We're really happy with how it looks. So much clearer. The water temperature has dropped, which is great for the fish and wildlife. And the river keeper, who does all the litter cleanups and everything, has been able to get to a lot more litter than they've ever been able to get to before because the water level dropped a little bit. So we have been hyper-focused on construction and design and engineering and permitting. There's a bunch of other stuff we have been doing in parallel to that. We're raising funding to do a maintenance endowment so that we can pay folks to come in and maintain the final product. We are looking at ways to deploy our Bloom Business Empowerment Center funding to businesses or potential entrepreneurs in the neighborhoods around phase one, so that as people come into the community and get to experience the Greenway, they also can hopefully spend money at local businesses. We've worked with Crispus Attucks for a couple years now in the Codorus Enrichment Program led by Eric Kirkland, and that is expanding in the coming years. And of course, there's lots and lots of opportunities for art and micro parks and a bunch of other things. But honestly, those are kind of the fun things we get to worry about after we get to construction and build phase one. And that's my whirlwind update on 7 years of work. So we're closer than we ever have before, but we know from past experience we're kind of in others' hands when it comes to permitting.